Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I was very pleased to receive the invitation to be part of this important event. Due to prior commitments, I regret not to be able to address you in person today. I strongly believe that the revised United Nations system of environmental economic accounting from the perspective of the Convention on Biological Diversity is a critical tool for achieving sustainable development. Let me explain why. Biodiversity, the variety of life on Earth, is a critical foundation for the Earth's life support system on which the welfare of current and future generations depend. Biodiversity underpins the healthy functioning of ecosystems, for instance, by making them more resilient to climate change. Healthy ecosystems, in turn, provide a range of ecosystem services that contribute to food security, to human health, to local livelihoods, and to economic development more generally. Healthy ecosystems are thus an important part of what we call natural capital, so as to underline that nature is, in fact, also a critical economic asset and source of public benefits. For instance, food production depends largely on biodiversity and genetic resources and the ecosystem services associated with them. Thousands of different crop varieties and animal breeds are found in the rich genetic pool of species. Biodiversity is also the basis for maintaining soil fertility, achieving biological pest control, and pollination. Bees and other pollinators are estimated to be worth more than $200 billion a year to the global food economy. Intact ecosystems provide services that are essential for human health, such as the regulation of pests and vector-based diseases. Biodiversity is the basis of traditional medicine, and a large number of top-ranking global prescription drugs contain components derived from plant extracts. Ecosystems also play a role of what is sometimes called ecological infrastructure, meaning that nature helps to provide public services like clean drinking water, erosion control, or coastline protection. Maintaining and restoring this infrastructure implies very direct and significant economic returns in terms of saved expenditures for human-made infrastructure. In spite of these essential benefits, biodiversity continues to be lost at the global level at unprecedented levels. As biodiversity is lost, the provision of ecosystem service is increasingly compromised. Ultimately, this will affect everyone. The impacts are, however, particularly severe and more immediate on the poor and vulnerable, women, children, and indigenous peoples. The Strategic Plan for Biodiversity for 2011 to 2020 was adopted by the Conference of the Parties of the CBD as a global framework for addressing this challenge. The United Nations General Assembly encouraged states to consider the strategic plan in the elaboration of the post-2015 UN Development Agenda. National governments around the globe are right now working intensively towards translating the strategic plan and its 20 Aichi biodiversity targets into national policies, in particular by revising and updating their National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plans, or NBSAPs. The strategic plan recognizes that in order to address biodiversity loss more effectively, we need to give better focus and attention to the underlying drivers of biodiversity loss. It is the myriad of policy and economic decisions made day in and day out without considering its impacts on nature and on biodiversity, which in their totality lead to the widespread decline of ecosystems and biodiversity. The strategic plan, therefore, calls for integrating biodiversity issues into broader policies, strategies, programs, and actions, including decision-making in economic sectors. In one word, we need to achieve what we call the mainstreaming of biodiversity. One important precondition in achieving such mainstreaming is to have more reliable statistical information on the status and trends of biodiversity and ecosystem services as they relate to different economic sectors, information that can then be used to assess progress against the different Aichi targets of the strategic plan and linked to public policies. This is why the strategic plan, under its mainstreaming goal, also calls for the incorporation of biodiversity values into national accounting, as appropriate, in reporting systems more generally. This is where the SEEA, as the prime international guidance on environmental accounting, can play an important role in enabling more effective implementation of the strategic plan and transforming, developing pathways towards sustainability. An important role of environmental accounting is to depict the contribution of environment to economic activities and to human well-being more generally. In this connection, it is important to note that the SEEA Volume 2 on experimental ecosystem accounts not just contains a dedicated chapter on biodiversity, but also draws explicit linkage to the other ecosystem services covered in this particular volume, and also to critical resources accounts covered in the SEEA Central Framework, such as the land use and land cover accounts. This is very important as biodiversity underpins ecosystem functioning and the provision of many ecosystem services. Well-established ecosystem and biodiversity accounts can actually make elements of the central framework more useful. For instance, many ecosystem services, such as species that are harvested directly for food, fiber, timber, or energy, are captured under the SEEA Central Framework. However, information on the status and trends of the underlying ecosystems that delivers these provisioning services would be very useful, in fact critical, when seeking to assess long-term sustainability. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, we now face the challenging task to implement the revised SEEA. This will require closer cooperation among both the biodiversity community and the statistical community. With financial support provided by the government of Norway, my office recently teamed up with our colleagues from Statistical Division in New York working on the SEEA, as well as with UNEP, to get interest pilot countries ready within a year to embark on implementing ecosystems accounting. This is part of our efforts as a member of the United Nations family to support countries that are willing to move ahead with this important issue, complementary to initiatives such as the World Bank's Coordinated Partnership on Wealth Accounting and Valuation of Ecosystem Services, the WAVES. It is my hope that this will eventually enable us to scale up SEEA implementation in order to enable the effective implementation of the strategic plan and meet the demands for the post-2015 development agenda. I look forward to continuing work closely with the SEEA process and wish you a thought-provoking and fruitful seminar. Thank you.